All right. So with regards to CIDR subnetting, everything we're going to be talking about today, because we're going to try to keep it relatively simple. We do not need to have a super deep knowledge of CIDR subnetting because you can get into extremely high numbers with it. We're focusing strictly on Class C addresses, and we'll be only dealing with the last octet, right? So, and we know with the subnet mask how it is portrayed is like it's kind of like this, right?
Those are groups, not octets. Remember that, guys.
Those are what?
Groups and not octets. Because I kept saying octets yesterday.
Well, no, octets. You were saying octets with regards to IP version 6.
That's
and they have 16 bits in each group. So octet wouldn't fit because octo is 8. So that's why, they call it an octet, because it's 8 bits. So we know our subnet mask for a class C would be all ones for the first 3 octets and then zeros for the last octets. And that gives us a class C. And that's how it knows that when it moves through the network. Well, that is what is called a class full subnet, meaning you're sticking strictly to the basic classifications A, B, C, D. Now, inside our networks, yes, Evan.
So I'm not confused. I was just curious, why are they not called groups? But aren't octets and groups the same thing though?
You can call them groups, but you'll commonly hear them referred to as octets.
So they're the same. They're the same meaning, just different wording.
Yes, I mean, in the IP version 6, we call them groups because it's 16s. I mean, I guess you could call it like sette decans, but I mean, if you want to use the Latin terms, but I mean, that would it's more verbose than just saying group.
Okay.
Or say decam, excuse me, sette decam would be 17. Sorry, say decam would be 16. Lost my train of thought. So say you work for an enterprise organization and we have this, it's a medium-sized company, not a whole lot of people, but we want to break down this class C address group that they gave us into even smaller groups so that we can route between different groups in our organization. So in order to do this, we can do what's called subnetting, which all it basically is just breaking up this group into smaller groups. So in a class C address, how many hosts can I have? How many computers? How many addresses?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
In a class C address, how many hosts can I have?
255.
It's not a trick question.
155.
255. Because when you add up all those things and you turn them all on, it's 255, right? Now, here's the kicker. What did we say when you put 255 in the last part of an IP? What was that?
Broadcasting.
Broadcast. It sends out a message to all of them. So that last IP, that 255, that's your broadcast. So we can't use that one. So that's one taken away. And then we now need to take away one for the network host, which would be like the router or the gateway to that network. So the 0 would be the network host. So you have, 0's gone, 255 is gone. Because it's a total of 256, right? So we're now taking 2 away, 254 hosts plus 254 computers plus your host and your broadcast. Every network requires a host and a broadcast. At this point, just understand that definitionally. Don't let it overly confuse you at this point. So now in order to break up this subnet into smaller groups, we need to keep adding to the ones, right? A host and a broadcast address. Those are the two. TK. So our subnet mask is determined by ones followed by zeros, right? So, and how do we represent a class C in shorthand? So we could say a bunch of ones and a zeros. We can say 255.255.255.0 or what? What can we say?
Slash
24.
Slash 24, right?
24, yeah.
Yeah, slash 24. Excellent. So that means there's 24 ones before the zeros begin. That's all that means. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, it's not going to let me do it. We're going to say this is a slash 25. So let me clear that. And then do this.
That's because of the extra one on that side.
Yeah. So now I've added an extra one into that last octet, right? And so now it is a slash 25 instead of a slash 24.
Which one?
Because we added the one.
We added the one, right? So now that's our network. So that means that that first binary bit is part of our network address, right? So that's the network versus host. Remember, the zeros are the host or the individual computer on the network. The ones are the network, correct? So now here, since this bit is part of the network now, it can only be two things, right? On or off. Because that's all bits can do, right? We can turn them on, we can turn them off. So what's now going to happen is from, I need my pen. So we can have the bit on or off, right? Actually, I probably should do that the other way around. So we have off or on, and we're strictly talking about this one bit right here. So when it's off, we could have this last 7 digits be our group of hosts, right? And then when it's on, then we have a different group, which would be these last 7 bits, right? Because remember, we have the network versus host. So if it's off, I can use these last 7 bits to add up. So if I add up these last 7 bits, what do I have? 0 to what?
0, 64.
Well, look at your,
Oh, I
like
see.
your class A.
What you're saying. Okay.
0 to 127, right?
Mhm.
So we would have hosts 0 to 127 on our first network. And then when we flip this bit on, we now have hosts 128 to 255 on our second network. So we've now broken a single network of 255 into 2 groups, 0 to 127 and 128 to 255. So basically, we just cut it in half, and we're using that one bit to determine whether we're using the lower group or the upper group. So when it's off, we're using the lower group. When it's on, we're using the upper group, right? And so our system will know when it comes into the network, if it's a 192.168, let me go ahead and type one up here. So right here. So if I have a 192.168.15.37, which network would it be in?
One with the zero.
Well, with the
off,
zero,
and
because
off.
that's 0 to 127, right?
Yeah.
So when it's filtered into our network, we're breaking it up into smaller chunks. So if it has an IP of 37, we know it goes into this group right here because it's in between this range, right? Now, same holds true. If it comes in an IP of 201, which network would it be in?
One.
In the one network, right?
Right.
Okay, so that in essence is what CIDR subnetting it is. But we can keep going with this. So this is the basic range, but we know now we have a host, which is our 0, and 127 is our broadcast. In here, 128 is our host because it's the first number. 255 is our broadcast for that network. We're breaking it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. So if I go a little bit further, and let's do this. Do this. So now what would this be represented as in shorthand notation?
Slash 26.
/26, right? Excellent. Now, how many networks do you think we'll have? We have 2 bits that we can now use for our network. They can only be on or off. So
510.
how many networks, not how many computers? How many networks?
2.
4. We have 2 bits, but each bit could be on or off, right? So here's where our options come in. And this is where people start getting a little bit confused. So our options are now 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1. Those are the 4 options we could make with 2 bits, right? So now we know this. So those are our 4 bits. And we're breaking things down even further. So instead of having 2 networks of 128, what do we have? We have 4 networks of, what's half of 128? You're cutting it in half again. So what's half of 128?
64.
There we go. So now we have 4 networks of 64 computers, right? Gotcha, Avery. So, okay, so we got four networks of 64 computers. So the first one would be 0 to 63, right? And then we would have 64 to 127. We'd have 128 to, was that 80, 92, 193, 191?
191.
And then we would have 192
To 223.
223 or 255, excuse me. Almost got me there, Janina. Almost. 255. So 192 to 255. So those would be our 4 network groups that we would have in a /26 subnet. You would have 4 networks, 64 computers in each network. So if I have a 192.168.15.37, where would that be? Double zero. Very good. If I change it up to 210, which network would it fall into?
0, 1.
We sure? We're getting 2
So
answers
110
here.
and 210. Oh, my bad. In that
That
case.
one is
1-1.
1-1. So there you go. So now it would fall into 1-1. Now, go ahead.
My bad. That looked like a 1-1. I was looking at
I know my
what you-
writing's terrible. Don't worry about it. So, and this is the essence of subnetting. And here's the thing is classless subnetting cannot be routed over the internet. It has to be done internally in your own network. This is you breaking up the networks you have into smaller chunks. Now, your internet service provider might give you a /26 or whatever. They're doing the subnetting on their end and only giving you a small chunk. So that may happen. However, when you go out into the regular internet, it doesn't allow classless subnetting. This is done internally. So when these IPs come in, your internal router will route these to the proper networks. So now we know /26 gives us 4 networks, 64 computers in each network. And we know in each network, the 0 and the 63, the 0 is your what?
Host.
Host.
Host. 63 is your what?
Broadcast.
Broadcast. This one, 128 is your what?
Host.
Host. 191 is your what?
Broadcast.
Broadcast. So basically what comes down is like, okay, I have 4 networks, 64 computers. I have to automatically subtract 2. That way I now have 62 computers in each network. This is network plus stuff, so you don't necessarily need to know this part of it, but those of you who are looking ahead, wanting to do that, this is kind of your introduction to that part of it. So let's go a little deeper. Let's go to the next level. So I'm going to erase this, and all of this stuff here. All right. Oops. So I'm going to give you guys. Oh, wait, did I actually? Where'd my IP address go? Sorry, bear with me. Let's get my eraser again. Try this one more time without erasing stuff I want to use. All right. I'm going to scrap this down here. Then grab my text, drop it right here. All right. I'm going to pause the recording right here.